Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unit 6, the very first lesson of Unit 6. We have a lot of exciting and new things to learn today, but of course, we're going to start out with our do now. So please press this link here and check out this project. And as you're checking out this project, I want you to think about the following questions. What aspects of the project do you know how to create today? What parts of this project are you not confident in creating today? And then how would you change this project to make it better on your own? So just if you want to pause this right now and as you go through this do now, do still look at this project and think about these questions, and then we'll come back and chat about it. So I'm assuming you've unpaused now. So some things that you might have noticed about the website is that it's a choose your own adventure website, right? It's very cool. It's based on Animal Crossing, which is all the rage these days, okay? And looking at the project, some aspects which you might know how to create today are, if we can just take a look at it together, you might know how to create uh, putting the image on the page. You would definitely know, because you're masters of HTML, how to get the text on the screen. And because you're masters of formatting with CSS, you would also know how to make everything look all pretty like and organized and things like that, have these buttons and opposite ends, things like that. Some things you might not be as confident making might be the interactivity. So like the fact that when you press a button, the page changes. The fact that you can double click on something and it changes, and how it changes based on what you've picked, right? It's a choose your own adventure. So these might be things that you don't know how to make yet, but that's okay, because that's exactly what we're going to be going over today. So today's objective, very excited, is we have two objectives actually. The first one is coders will define a programming language and identifying ways that JavaScript can be used in a website. Key vocabulary, programming language, and JavaScript. So we're learning a new language, which is going to help you eventually through this unit make a website like the one that you just saw. So interactive websites. We already know HTML and CSS. As I said, we are masters of HTML and CSS, okay? And while they make our web pages look cool, they don't allow our websites to do anything yet, right? It's kind of just like a beautiful picture, as you see in this picture here, okay? But our favorite websites we know have interactivity, right? And what do I mean by interactivity? I mean that, like, when we press things, they change, things show, things hide. You see in this GIF here, when you press that menu button on YouTube, a menu comes down. When we click on the video, it takes us to the video, right? So websites have interactivity. And the reason that they have interactivity is because they use JavaScript, our language that we are starting to learn today. So JavaScript allows for dynamic behaviors on the website, interactivity, and automation on a web page. And it's really important, because if we didn't have JavaScript, websites would be static. Static means they wouldn't change. No matter what we did, no matter what we pressed, they would stay the same. And then, like, the websites wouldn't work. Like, look at this GIF of pop code. If it was static, we wouldn't be able to code, right? JavaScript allows us to do these things where we are able to have so much interactivity and dynamicism, is that a word? Dynamicness on a web page. JavaScript allows for that. So JavaScript is a programming language. It's actually the first true programming language that we're going to learn. So what is a programming language? The definition is a programming language consists of instructions for computers to follow that will provide different output depending on the input. So what does that all mean? Let's look at this diagram on the right to illustrate this point. Okay, imagine you're playing a video game. You're sitting there, you have the controller in your hand. The input is what you do as a user, okay? So let's say you have the controller, and let's say you press A, or you press the stick, or you press B, or whatever, okay? That is the input. It's what you are doing. After you make that input, the computer then processes it. It thinks about what you did. Then after that, after it processes what you've done, what you get is an output. The output is what you see on your screen. So if your input was, say, pressing A, okay, the computer computes that. It's like, okay, A in this game is supposed to mean that the user kicks, or the user jumps, or the user grabs something. Then the output, okay, is that thing actually happening on the screen. So input is what you're doing, computing is what the computer's doing based on what you did, and the output is what is displayed based on the action that the user took, okay? Programming languages allow us to do this. They allow us to ask the computer to do something or to think about something, and then give us an output that we want based on what we did. HTML and CSS, while they're great and wonderful and very necessary, are not programming languages because they don't change based on the user, right? They're much more set and based on in terms of how they operate. Because JavaScript is a programming language, you might find it a bit more difficult in HTML and CSS, but it's actually a super valuable skill. Think about all the websites and apps that use JavaScript. There are many, many, many. It's called the language of the browser often, right? So it's a really valuable skill to learn and can make your websites and apps much more powerful. So that's why it's important for us to go over it, even if it is slightly more difficult than HTML and CSS in many ways. Okay, how do websites use JavaScript? So we talked about how they add interactivity to your websites. They allow it to do different things, right? And they also allow it to be changed based on what the user does, okay? So on the right here, we see an example on the top from Instagram. By the way, follow us on Instagram, it's Code Nation. So basically, it will change, this post will change based on what you do. If you want to see the rest of this post, you would press more. And if you want to view all the comments, you would press view all the comments, right? But the idea is that based on your input, pressing more or view all the comments, right? It would change. That's because of JavaScript. Another example would be if you're on like Amazon and you're shopping for stuff and you keep adding things to your cart, you notice how like the number of items in your cart changes, even though you didn't do anything. You added some to your cart, but like you didn't change the number, right? That's because of JavaScript, all right? The interactivity there, like saying you have 4 items on your cart and you add another one. Now you have 5 items in your cart. That's JavaScript doing that. It automatically responds to what's happening, okay? So I want you to think now, and you can pause here. How do the websites you go to use JavaScript? And think specifically, what kind of input do the websites that you go to ask for? And then what kind of output do the websites that you go to create? So you can pause here and just think about this for a second. How do the websites that you go to every day use JavaScript? Okay, so you can unpause now. So let's think about that, right? One, you could have thought of a lot of different examples, but let's say that we're using Netflix, right, on our computer. When you're on Netflix, you might see a picture of the movie or TV show that you want to watch, and you would click on it. So you clicking on that movie to watch it or a TV show to watch it is your input. What's the output then? What happens after you click the movie or TV show that you want to watch? Yeah, the output, which is in this case would be the movie playing, or maybe them showing a description of the movie or TV show. Sometimes they give that short little blurb about what it's about, right? But the output is that the movie playing or giving you a description based on your input, which is clicking on the movie icon. Okay, so this happens in tons of different websites. Think about also like Google. When you type into the search bar, right? You typing into the search engine, what you want is your input, and then the output is the search results, okay? We can think of many examples of this. So now that we have an idea for the programming languages and what JavaScript is, we're gonna practice something called algorithmic thinking. And the key vocabulary word here will be algorithm, which is something you might have heard in algebra class. We're gonna think about it in the computer or programming context now. So algorithms, what are they? Just a fancy word for the processes or set of steps that need to be followed to get a solution. That's all it is. When we use algorithmic thinking, we're breaking down a complicated problem into their smallest steps, like this drawing here on the right, right? We're trying to do something which can be complicated, building a table. We're breaking it down into 6 steps that allow us to go from the beginning to the end and end up with this nice table that we can use, right? That's algorithmic thinking, breaking something down into steps. This is something that computer programmers do all the time when they're trying to solve a difficult problem. Let's say they're trying to make a website that does X, Y, and Z, whatever it has to do, right? They need to think, well, what are the steps I need to take in order to make it function the way I want it to function. So algorithmic thinking for computer programmers like you all is going to be very important. So when we're trying to do algorithmic thinking, the first thing that we think about is what is the problem that I'm trying to solve, right? We can't solve the problem if we don't know what the problem is. So the first thing we think about is what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Let's say I want to know how tall I am in inches, right? I know my height in feet and inches, but I want to know how tall I am in inches, okay? That's the problem that I'm trying to figure out. So that's the first step. I need to figure out when I'm doing algorithmic thinking, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Boom. The second step, now that I know what problem I'm trying to solve, I need to gather ingredients. And when I mean ingredients here, I'm not specifically talking about food, although this could apply to cooking as well, right? So if I know I want to figure out how many feet I am in inches, I need to gather ingredients about how I'm going to figure this out. So that means one ingredient is I must know how tall I am in feet and inches. So that if you're 5'8", you're 5'2", you're 6'2", you're 5'5", okay? I need to know that. That's one ingredient. But then the second ingredient I need to know is that there are 12 inches in the foot, right? I need to know that conversion rate. So these are the ingredients that I'm gathering in order to be able to answer the initial problem that I solved. That's step two. I defined the problem, step one. Step two, I figured out what I'm going to need to solve this problem or my ingredients. Step three, okay? Now I'm going to need to determine, well, I have the problem. I know what problem I need to figure out. I have the ingredients. What's the steps that I need to follow in order to be able to solve this problem? So the first step is I know I'm going to need to take height in feet and inches that I already have. Second step, I need to take number in feet and multiply that by 12 because I know that there are 12 inches in a foot. And then step three, I need to add the number that I found in step two to the number of inches I am from step one, okay? So these are the steps that I'm going to need to follow in order to solve this problem that I initially set out. How many feet am I in inches? And then finally, the final step is just to test it out, right? And see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I need to go back and make adjustments. So let's say I'm 5'2" and I get the answer that I'm 1,000 inches, right? That seems a bit off. So then I can go and check my answer and I might find it that I did something wrong. And then I just have to adjust my steps. That's it. So that is the idea. We go through these 4 steps. We come up with the problem. We get the ingredients that we need to solve the problem. We decide what steps we're going to need to take. And finally, we test it out and adjust if we need to adjust. That's algorithmic thinking in a nutshell, those 4 steps. And this, if we were to apply this to code, this is what it might look like. This is actual JavaScript code. Let's say you want to make a website or an app or something that calculated feet to inches. This is what it might look like in JavaScript, right? We have all our ingredients on the top there. And then on the bottom, we have the steps by which we can convert feet and inches to just inches. And there we have it. That is algorithmic thinking put into code, put into action here. So I want you to turn and talk. Let's do one more example. I want you to turn and talk and think about this simple everyday problem. If I'm trying to check my email, what ingredients do I need? What ingredients would you need to check your email? So I want you can pause the video right now and think about this, and then come back and we can discuss. Okay, I'm assuming you've unpaused. So if we're trying to check our email, there's lots of different things that you all could have said for ingredients, right? We need Wi-Fi, okay, our data. We need a computer or a phone in order to do this. We need to know the web address, whether it's like gmail.com. That's an ingredient. Our username and password is an ingredient, right? Because we can't check it otherwise. All of these things are ingredients which we will later use in order to solve the problem of checking your email, okay? And then the third step, you can put them in the steps. Like first I go on gmail.com. Then I put in my username and password. Then I go in and I click the email that I want to check, right? But those are the ingredients that you need in order to solve this problem. So we're actually not going to do this guided practice together. The idea was that if we were in person, what we would do, or if we were on a live remote class, your volunteer would be making a sandwich based on the instructions that you have given them. And the idea is to show that you have to be pretty specific with your steps, with your algorithmic thinking, so that they can make the sandwich correctly. I can't demonstrate that to you live, but if you're interested in seeing what that might look like, I'll add a link to a video in the description, which shows you a father who's trying to make a sandwich with his kids just based on their instructions, right? And it's pretty similar to what a computer programmer does, because we try to tell the computer to do something with JavaScript. So you need to make sure that we are very clear with our steps, right? So you can check that video out. That was the guided practice here. For your independent practice, you're going to go to this website and test out some algorithms on this website called Blockly Maze. Let me just click on it and show you what you're supposed to do here. So you're first going to play a game, okay? And then what you're basically trying to do here is you're trying to make it so that this person moves to that target. And in order to do that, you have to move these puzzle pieces here, these purple puzzle pieces together to command that person to do what you want. So in this case, in order to get to the target, I need to move them in what direction? Forward, right? So I would move this over and I would connect it. And then when I want to see what the result is, I'm just going to press run program and then see if the algorithm that I gave was correct. This is a way of just practicing this algorithm thinking, because again, it's going to be super important to break down problems into steps when we're using a programming language like JavaScript. So now we're at the closing of our lesson. So today we talked about what JavaScript is, what its purpose is. We also talked about algorithmic thinking, which is something that computer programmers like you all are going to need to use in order to use JavaScript well and make the wonderful web creations that you are going to do throughout the rest of this year, okay? So make sure to do your exit ticket, and these are two open-ended questions. What is a programming language is the first one. And then number two is, how are algorithms useful? So please take a moment to do your exit ticket and then submit it. And with that said, we're done with lesson 6.1. Really excited to go into more about JavaScript in the subsequent lessons, and see you next time. Bye.